to the Secretary of State's new position. Here in my seat of Newbury, we have over 5,200 women who have been unfairly affected by changes to the state pension age. These women were wronged through no fault of their own, and they deserve justice. With a High Court hearing due in December, this could be a crucial moment for the government to finally do the right thing. So will the Secretary of State now listen to the Ombudsman's recommendations and commit to providing compensation to WASPy women?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have to remind the honourable member that his party supported the acceleration in the rise of the basic state pension age when they were in government, and that has given rise to some of the questions he's raising today. Now, Mr. Speaker, you would not expect me to comment on ongoing litigation, and I won't do that, but I can assure him and the House that we'll take all relevant factors into account when considering the process for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Previous to my election to this place, I worked for a homeless charity in Harlow called Streets to Homes. One of the cases involved a man who was homeless due to delays in getting his state pension. Can I ask how the Department ensuring delays like this aren't commonplace?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we hope that those entitled to the basic state pension receive a seamless and fast service. This is a pension that people contribute to throughout their lives, and when they reach state pension age, we of course hope that they get it as soon as possible.
Bobby Dean.
Number 2, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer this question together with questions 9 and 11. Access to work does a very important job, but current delays with the scheme and our ambition for an 80% rate of employment point to the need for reform. The consultation launched in the Pathways to Work Green Paper, closed on the 30th of June. We're now reviewing all aspects of the scheme in light of the responses that we received.
Bobby Dean.
Mr. Speaker, I had a constituent come to my surgery the other week, and they felt pretty frustrated that the Access to Work scheme that once supported them was pulling the rug beneath their feet as they progressed through their career. My constituent has been a model example. He has not let his multiple neurodivergent diagnoses hold him back. He has worked hard, and with support, he's earned a promotion into sort of a deputy leadership position. But it's at this point that DWP decided to reassess him, and they have downgraded his support. Right at the moment, he felt he needed to maintain that support with his new responsibilities. So can you assure us that when these reforms come, they will look to make sure that people can be supported through progress in their career as well as into work in the first place?
Well, the honourable gentleman makes a good point. Obviously, I don't know about the details of the case that he's referred to, but it is important that access to work and our wider employment support enables people not just to get into work, but to thrive once they're there, exactly as he says.
Marshall Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Access to work, the Access to Work scheme provides vital support, and it's one of the best forms of support for blind and partially sighted workers. But when their cases or their awards come up for review, they are finding that their support and awards are being significantly reduced. Now, given the government's commitment to keeping Britain working, can the Minister tell me or explain why blind and partially sighted people are seeing their support cut, and will he agree to meet with me and other sightless organisations to see how we can address some of these challenges within the scheme?
Minister.
Well, I say to my honourable friends, there's been absolutely no change in the policy on access to work, but what has happened is there has been more scrupulous application of the existing policy and guidance over the last year. That means that the awards that have been given from access to work have been more consistent, but I do know there have been cases where support has been reduced. I'm looking forward to attending the forthcoming meeting of the all-party group that she chairs on eye health, and that might perhaps give us an opportunity to discuss the issues that she's raised.
Martin Wrigley.
Mr. Speaker. On 20th of May, I met with the Minister to speak about access to work claims that were being denied, changed or reduced, all contrary to the guidelines. The Minister assured me this was a communications issue and the guidelines hadn't changed and that officials were going to fix the problem, speaking to the local job centre. The problems weren't fixed. Since then, both Dawlish Gardens Trust and the No Limits Cafe in Newton Abbot have ceased to provide access to work services because the system just isn't working, and they said every claim was being rejected, and this has been mirrored by the Access to Work Collective. I asked the Minister who changed the guidelines and why. Or are they simply being ignored to save money at the cost of vulnerable adults? If the Minister would like more information, I would be happy to meet with him again.
Very happy to meet with him again, but I can assure him the policy has not changed. In fact, we just published last week the spending figures on access to work, and spending went up 17% in the last year. It went up 32% in the year before that. So I don't know what's happened in the particular case that he's referring to, but I'd be very happy to have a further look at it.
Dave Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, access to work is absolutely vital, and I agree that at the high end of the scale, sometimes it can be more expensive. But I have a very senior person in the world of theatre in my constituency, running Grey Eye Theatre indeed, and she requires access to work. But even with the right support, there's not enough for the needs that she has, because she needs a British Sign Language interpreter with her at all times. They are at the pinnacle of assessing what people need, and are very good. And I would love to invite the Minister to visit Grey Eye Theatres, because they are great at supporting disabled people into work with access to work support and without.
Minister.
Well, I am aware that a big chunk of access to work does go to interpretation for British Sign Language, and it's not unusual for people who draw on that support to hit the cap, which increased last year. It's now £69,920 per year. We clearly will look at that, along with all other aspects of the scheme, in the review that we are undertaking at the moment.
Shadow Minister Mark Garner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, back in May last year, the party opposite, whilst in opposition, was outraged to learn that average processing time for applications to the Access to Work programme was running at fully 43.9 days. In fact, so outraged was the Labour Party that they made it a manifesto pledge to tackle this very specific problem. Now, Mr. Speaker, after more than 15 months of a Labour government, it seems that far from slashing waiting times, applicants now have to wait an average of 93.6 days. That is more than twice the waiting times under the previous government. A year in government, Mr. Speaker, and the Labour Party has doubled the misery and uncertainty suffered by disabled people. Why?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're fixing the very, very serious problems left behind by the previous government. On access to work, the number of people processing the applications has been increased by 118 since May of last year. But the honourable gentleman is right, the delays are still a problem. That points very clearly to the need for reform, and that's what we're getting on with.
Shanker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want every young person in Derby. Question number 3.
Excellent. Secretary.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer question 3 together with question 6. Skills are vital to give young people opportunity, economic growth and the country's renewal. That's why, as part of our Youth Guarantee, we are increasing short courses for high-demand sectors like AI and construction, expanding the number of youth hubs and partnering with sports clubs to get help to people where they are in the community. And last week we published the Skills White Paper, which sets out the next steps to train the workforce of the future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I still want every young person in Derby to see technical education and apprenticeships as first-class, not second-best routes to success. University technical colleges where students are 4 times more likely to process onto apprenticeships are key to unlocking that success. Will my right honourable friend meet with Pride Park UTC to discuss their plans to give young people in Derby real choice and real opportunity by rolling out a new technical centre in our city?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend has spoken often about this, and I believe he started his career as an apprentice. And as a former Rolls-Royce worker, he'll have noted the Skills White Paper, and of course he knows all about the importance of that company to the City of Derby. Let me congratulate Pride Park UTC on their plans to have a new technical skills centre, and I will ensure that he gets a meeting with me or with the relevant minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My committee's recent report on further education and skills highlights the poor level of information on vocational and technical training opportunities, including apprenticeships, currently available to young people while they are in school. And we recommend that UCAS should be expanded to provide a single portal for information on academic, vocational and technical opportunities, so that every young person is aware of how they can train in the skills they need to access a good job. Will the Secretary of State consider this recommendation and work with the Department for Education to deliver it?
Mr. Speaker, I very much welcome that question. I think the Honourable Lady raises a very important point. If we are going to have equal status for HE and apprenticeship routes, we should also look at how the information about these is disseminated to potential applicants, and I hope she's pleased to hear that I've already asked the Department to begin work in this area.
David Times.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the worries with the new regime and Skills England is the loss of independence and the guaranteed business voice written into law that existed with the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. How will the Secretary of State ensure that business does have a voice, setting standards and making sure those standards are upheld so that everybody can have confidence in the changed system?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is quite right to say that the business voice and the employer's voice in this is very important. And when I wrote the new remit letter to Skills England, I specifically asked them to take into account the views of employers, because it is very important that in the skills system we are training people in a way that employers want and that meets the future demands of the labour market.
Ashley Fox.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Secretary of State to his place with his new responsibility for skills. The government has recently reduced the amount of funding for Level 7 apprenticeships. So can he tell the House what assessment his department have made of the potential impact of this reduced funding on the number of nurses in training?
Mr.
Speaker, the apprenticeship and skills budget, like every other budget, does demand choices. We are choosing to prioritise the levels that we need in the economy, where the value is greatest. That does imply certain choices, and I'm confident that the choices we've made will benefit the workforce as a whole and future opportunities.
Brace.
The floor, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'll answer this question with question 23. We are determined to open up opportunities in work for people with health conditions. The Keep Britain Working Review we publish soon. In Pathways to Work, we have 1,000 work advisors supporting this group and will devolve powers so areas can shape their own joined-up local work, health and skills offer.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Plus in Exeter, who support people with living with physical disabilities and mental health conditions back into employment. I met some of the fantastically committed mentors who provide tailored training and support, helping hundreds of people who have been long-term unemployed into meaningful jobs, boosting their confidence and helping them to rebuild their lives. Does the Minister agree with me that under the last Tory government, disability employment was shockingly neglected, in contrast to this government's recent announcement about Connect to Work funding for Devon, which will help many more people back into the workplace?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. The disability employment gap has been stuck around 30 percentage points ever since 2010. The example that he refers to in his constituency sounds like a great example of exactly the kind of resource we want to draw on in local areas, in each local area, to make sure that disabled people have the opportunities in work that they've been denied in the past.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mobility is a lifeline for people with disabilities, for getting to health appointments, studying, maintaining employment and so much more. Cuts to the scheme risk increased health needs and increased unemployment, likely to cost much more than any short-term savings. Does my right honourable friend agree that before any proposed cuts, a proper impact assessment is absolutely vital?
I can assure my honourable friend that there will be no changes to the eligibility conditions for the PIP mobility component, or indeed other aspects of PIP, until the conclusion of the review, which I will be leading and co-producing with disabled people, and that's expected to report in the autumn of next year.
Sir Julian Lewis.
When severe mental illness strikes, it can be devastating and totally debilitating. But the problem from his department's point of view is that its symptoms are invisible. There have been reports about people faking mental illness in order to gain benefits. Is he satisfied that his department has appropriate checks in place?
Minister.
Yes, I think appropriate checks are in place, but as I've just mentioned, we are undertaking this review of the PIP assessment, and we will need to look carefully, and we'll be doing this together with disabled people, look carefully at the way these decisions and judgments are made.
Shocker Adam.
Speaker, at a recent roundtable at the Ayers Monsell Club for Young People in my constituency of Leicester South,
Parents told me that their young adults with learning difficulties who volunteered for years, often with major supermarkets, still struggle to secure work. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure young people with high-functioning learning disabilities in long-term volunteering roles can access clear pathways into paid employment?
Yeah. Well, the honourable gentleman raises a very good point, and he will have seen, as many will have done, recent publicity about a particular case of this kind. At the moment, the proportion of young people with severe learning disabilities, or indeed people with severe learning disabilities who are in employment, is tiny. So we're working with employers and some very good supported internship programs in the hope of opening up opportunities for work, and I hope we're going to see many more opportunities in the future. We appointed an expert panel earlier this year to look at how better to support people with neurodivergence into work, and they're coming forward with some interesting proposals.
Chair of the Select Committee, Debbie Abrahams.
Mr. Speaker. Recently, Health Equity North produced an analysis for the Select Committee which revealed that just getting 5% of people with disabilities or health conditions into employment would yield cost savings of over £12 billion. So my question to my right honourable friend is what progress is being made with employers to enable these sick and disabled people who want to and are able to work, get them into employment?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right and raises a very important point, and I agree with her about the tremendous value for the people who benefit and for the economy more widely of opening up opportunities in employment in the way that she describes. This is, of course, is exactly what the Keep Britain Working review, being led for us by Sir Charlie Mayfield, is looking at. And I'm looking forward, and I'm sure she'll find extremely interesting, the report from Sir Charlie, which I'm expecting to be published now quite soon.
Gideon Amos.
Mr. Speaker, 4,000 people in Somerset, many of them with disabilities, being transitioned from employment support allowance to universal credit. They were assured they wouldn't lose out, but one constituent waited 3 months with absolutely no income at all until my intervention and the department's intervention. And Somerset were also not warned of this transition, which causing huge difficulties for the county to assess council tax benefit implications. What steps will the Minister take to make sure people do not lose out, which is what they were told would happen in the transition to universal credit?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not quite sure why the news of this transition didn't reach Somerset, but the plans have been quite well publicised, I think, and we have put in place a very careful enhanced support journey for people, including quite a number of people on ESA who might struggle with the transition. So if there's a particular case, and I think he's raised one, if there are other particular cases where there are difficulties, then we are able to provide extra support to make sure that people can make that transition without hardship.
Dr. Danny Chambers.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
From Ben? Oh, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, 975,000 people are being paid carers allowance in England and Wales, including some 900 in the honourable member's constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all know carers give everything to care for their loved ones, and that's both physically, emotionally, and also financially. The government received the carers report 3 months ago, and under Lib Dem pressure has agreed to publish this by the end of the year. Do we know how many carers are going to be sort of unfairly penalised in the 6 months between the government receiving the report and publishing it?
Okay. Minister.
Well, I agree with the honourable member's characterisation of the degree of commitment and sacrifice that very large numbers of carers are making all across the country. As he's said, the report which we commissioned from Liz Sayce is going to be published together with the government's response to that report by the end of the year, and the question that he's asking will be addressed in that response.
Justine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we came to office, there were almost 1 million young people not in education, employment or training. And this government is determined to offer young people proper opportunities. Our youth guarantee will ensure that 18 to 21-year-olds are learning or earning, helping to prevent them become economically inactive almost before their careers have even begun. And as part of this, my honourable friend might have seen that the Chancellor announced a jobs guarantee scheme would be part of this in the future.
Sullivan.
Speaker, with 1 in 6 young Scots not in education, employment or training, including hundreds across my constituency of Bathgate and Linlithgow, I welcome the Government's Youth Guarantee to give young people the training or job support they need. However, with stubborn youth unemployment, the Scottish Government's swinging cuts to the college sector and employers warning Scottish apprenticeships are less favourable than those in England, how will he work to ensure young people across the UK can benefit from this government's ambition?
So stay.
Well, Mr. Speaker, not for the first time we have to point out that the Scottish Government has benefited from the biggest financial settlement since the introduction of devolution, and it shouldn't be too much to expect that at least a proportion of that should be spent on expanding opportunity for young people in her constituency and throughout Scotland. And Scotland has given so much to the world in terms of creativity and innovation. It is absolutely critical that the next generation of young Scots gets the chance to do the same.
Tim Farrell.
Mr. Speaker, skills boot camps in Cumbria provided a great opportunity, 60 hours of training for young people in disciplines as varied as coding, scaffolding and project management. It cost 2.7 million across the whole of Cumbria to deliver that. Chicken feed really compared to the benefit that those young people and their future employers get out of it. What conversations he had with his friends in the Treasury to make sure that scheme is maintained and continued?
Seriously?
Well, I'm always having conversations with my friends in the Treasury, but I do agree with him that flexibility and some short courses in the skills and training system is very important. Not everything has to be done according to the exact same formula and recipe, and I do think that shorter training courses have a big part to play.
Secretary of State Helen Wetler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome the right honourable gentleman and wish him luck in his new job, especially because every day that passes under this government, we see fewer people enjoying that chance to start a new job. Unemployment has gone up month after month. Nearly 1 million young people aren't in education, employment or training because of this government's policies, their jobs tax and their business red tape. Even the pension minister's former think tank agrees with me on this. There are people all around the country out looking for work, young people who want to get on in life, all those people trying to provide for their families. So please can he tell us and tell them, when will he get unemployment down?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, she has a short memory because the government that she served in presided over the biggest slowdown in living standards in recent memory, and there are 358,000 more people in work than there were at the start of the year. So we will keep supporting young people into work. We will change the system that we inherited, where we had the wrong incentives and a lack of support, and we're putting both of those things to rights.
Well, no surprises there, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister can put new faces on the front bench, but they still don't have the answers. And he criticised the previous Conservative government, but we got unemployment down to a 40-year low, a record Labour could only dream of. They don't want to be held to account, and worse still, he knows it won't work because the country is looking down the barrel of more tax rises in next month's budget, killing yet more jobs and opportunities. Whether it's graduates looking for their first job or older people made redundant, people are crying out for a government that's on their side. So I ask him, what will it take to get the Chancellor to understand that it's businesses that create jobs, not the government? And doesn't he agree that the more she damages the economy, the bigger the welfare bill will get?
Well, Mr. Speaker, since we came into office, interest rates have been cut 5 times, helping businesses and households. Business confidence is at a 9-year high, according to Lloyds. We've had announcements of much more private investment, including £150 billion of private investment during the recent state visit. Add to that the trade deals that they couldn't secure, and there are reasons to be optimistic about the future of the economy, and I hope that she shares them.
Seamus Logan.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, co-chairs the Ministerial Child Poverty Task Force, which is leading our work across government to develop the UK-wide child poverty strategy, which will be published later this year. We are considering all available levers to give every child the best start in life, building on work underway already across all 4 nations. Ahead of publication, the Government has already taken action for the whole of the UK, including introducing a fair repayment rate and improving the adequacy of the standard allowance of universal credit from April 2026.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for his answer. The Child Poverty Action Group estimate that because of this Government's policies, especially the 2-child cap, every day more than 100 children are dragged into poverty. That equates to almost 3,400 children between now and the autumn statement by the Chancellor at the end of next month. So here's a lever. While child poverty in Scotland is falling, why doesn't the Minister finally listen to reason by scrapping this cruel policy? Why is he waiting? Why does he not just act now?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this Government is acting now. We have already, for families in England, announced that all children will be, in families in receipt of universal credit, will receive free school meals, lifting 100,000 children out of poverty. We have capped the cost of school uniform, introduced a new crisis and resilience fund. Our child maintenance service reforms will lift 20,000 children out of poverty, and there will be much more done when the Child Poverty Task Force reports later this year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cost of living crisis remains the main issue that people face, despite what the far right try to claim. One way to really help struggling families would be to lift the 2-child benefit cap. That would lift hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty across the country, including many in my East Leeds constituency. So isn't scrapping the 2-child benefit cap what should be announced in the forthcoming budget?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will understand that I'm not going to make policy from the dispatch box, but what I would say to him, as I have already said to the previous question, is that all available levers are under consideration as part of our Child Poverty Task Force reporting later this year. We will do what it takes to bear down on child poverty. There are many levers that we can look at to do that. We have pulled some already, and we will continue that work.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every member in this chamber shares a commitment to lifting people out of poverty, especially children. We just have different views on how to go about it. Children in workless households are nearly 4 times more likely to live in poverty compared to those in households where adults work. We know that work pays. And yet we on these benches find ourselves surrounded by parties just itching to scrap the 2-child benefit cap, resorting to yet another sticking plaster like universal breakfast clubs to reduce uncomfortable figures without putting the hard work in to tackle the causes. So does the Minister share my concern that lifting the 2-child benefit cap will increase worklessness, and can he guarantee that taxes will not go up in next month's budget for adults who work hard and make careful decisions about family size in order to pay for the £3.6 billion it will cost to lift the cap?
Minister.
I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I am stunned to hear that the fight that the opposition frontbench chooses to pick on this occasion is opposing universal free breakfast clubs, when we know that well-fed children have hungry minds. It's exactly what she said, for those chirping from a sedentary position. But what I find even more staggering, Mr. Speaker, is the lectures from a front bench opposite that left almost 3 million people in this country economically inactive, around 1 million young people out of work, and they dragged 900,000 children into poverty when the last Labour government lifted 600,000 out. It is the last Labour government that we will be taking lessons from, not the last Tory one.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Steve Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I note that last year the new Secretary of State for the Department of Work and Pensions said that it's open to debate as to whether the two-child limit is harmful. I note also that this policy is the most impactful of driving children into poverty, with more than 730,000 of them in poverty. Will the Minister acknowledge that the two-child limit is harmful and work with Treasury colleagues to turn this over?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very happy to acknowledge the findings of, I think, the Child Poverty Action Group, who have put forward the statistics that the honourable gentleman has set out. What I would remind him of, as I would remind all members of this House of, is that it is not the only lever available to us. All levers are under active consideration, but I would remind him, as I have reminded other colleagues, of the steps that this government has already taken, including the rollout of universal free school meals, not universal free school meals to all families in receipt of universal credit, which alone will lift 100,000 children out of poverty.
Young.
Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, the Skills White Paper we published last week will create more opportunities, and as I said in response to an earlier question, my remit letter to Skills England makes clear the importance of working closely with employers. Employers have told us that they want more flexibility in the apprenticeships levy, and so the Growth and Skills offer is delivering this with more foundation and shorter courses launching next year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a recent round-table meeting in my Thornbury and Yate constituency, small businesses told me the particular challenges that they face in delivering apprenticeships. Given his department is now responsible for this important policy area, what is he doing to reform apprenticeships to make them easier for SMEs to deliver, and what support will you provide so that more can do so?
Well,
Mr. Speaker, we want apprenticeships to be available to employers of all sizes. We have reduced the length of time an apprenticeship needs to take, and I think we can go further in that short course flexibility, which should be of particular help to small and medium-sized employers.
Jessica Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently visited Premier Forest Projects in Newport to learn more about the vocational training and employment opportunities the business is offering to care experienced young school leavers in Newport, with some wonderful success stories. Can I suggest the department look at the model this company is creating and perhaps say more about how the government is working with businesses to make sure that opportunities like this are more accessible for people from all backgrounds, including those who are care experienced?
So, Rooster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to look at the experience of that particular employer, and I enjoyed a recent visit to South Wales, to a different part of South Wales, to open an opportunity hub which is aimed precisely at getting more young people into work, particularly those who've been out of the labour market through long-term sickness issues. And we want to support Wales in doing this. We allocated an extra £10 million to this work over the coming year.
Detainee.
Question number 12, Mr. Speaker.
Minister will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'll take question 12 and 26 and 16 together. I obviously recognise the challenges facing those without inflation protection, particularly after the cost of living pressures of recent years. I think that's shared across this House. I met with a cross-party group of MPs earlier this year to discuss exactly this issue. Mr. Speaker, reforms in the Pension Schemes Bill give trustees more flexibility to share surpluses in their DB pension schemes with employers and to negotiate for members to benefit from any sharing of surplus. And that could include discretionary increases to address the issue my right honourable friend raises.
Mr. Speaker, through the efforts of pension associations, we know that there have been unintended consequences of the 95 Pension Act, which made it legal to stop payment of indexation to the pre-97 pensioners of successful multinationals like 3M's and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, recruited with the promise of index-linked pensions, who are now suffering hardship, their pensions already frozen for 15 plus years, despite healthy funds and trustees' pleas. So what will he do to stop this dishonourable practice from continuing so that these companies deliver the financial security they promised?
Minister.
I absolutely recognise the issue my honourable friend has raised. Any of us in that situation would want to see those increases in those pensions continued. She's aware about the legal background to this, but what I would say is that scheme rules govern when increases with inflation can be paid. Those aren't changed retrospectively, but the pensions regulator has spelt out that trustees should consider those not receiving inflation increases when they're taking their decisions, and they should consider the history of making such awards, and particularly in some of the examples she's just provided. As I say, I think the provisions in the Pension Schemes Bill give trustees more power to argue for those increases.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've been contacted by a constituent. Both she and her husband worked for Hewlett-Packard. They accrued their pension before 1997, and now, along with about 50,000 members of the pre-97 alliance, they're facing real financial hardship. In another 10 years, their pensions will be pretty much worthless. Will the Minister not consider legislating to ensure that these people aren't left in poverty, having been promised a proper pension when they started work for these companies?
Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I mean, the Honourable Lady mentions a particular company, but there are others, and there's particularly a small number of companies generally that are in the situation that we are talking about here. I'm sure that the people running that company, but also on the trustees, will have heard the powerful case made by honourable members on both sides of this House. Those are decisions that have to be taken in line with the scheme rules, but nobody wants to see savers seeing the value of their pension fall over time, and I hope that employers will take the case being made in this chamber seriously.
Maguire.
Question 13, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is unacceptable that 23% of children in Cornwall are living in relative poverty, and we will set out measures to tackle its structural and root causes in our child poverty strategy later this year.
Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that answer. Child poverty cannot be tackled if children have nowhere safe to live. One of the most shameful legacies of the last Tory government was in Cornwall. It was left with over 700 children living in temporary accommodation, and only 1.4% of homes are now affordable for families on local housing allowance. What assessment has the Minister made of how that shortfall in affordable homes is driving child poverty rates even higher, and what urgent steps will he take to reverse it?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable gentleman is right to highlight the appalling living standards that some children find themselves living in, and indeed some of the population more broadly. My advice to any Liberal Democrat MP would of course be to stop blocking the homes that we so desperately need, but I would also remind him that this government has invested £39 billion in the delivery of social and affordable homes, because unlike them, we as a party are determined to tackle the housing crisis and to build, baby, build.
This is a Cornish question, Perrin Moon, so others please don't stand. Yeah.
As Mr. Speaker, I represent the most deprived constituency in Cornwall, which is one of the most deprived areas in Northern Europe. Child poverty shot up under the Conservatives. Today, our local FE college, the Ofsted outstanding Cornwall College, is turning away young learners in construction and engineering due to a lack of space. The college has a solution to expand, but will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss this issue and help our young people, our amazing young people, break this cycle of deprivation?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sorry to hear of the situation that my honourable friend outlines. What I can say to him is that if the Secretary of State is not able to meet with him, I would be more than happy to do so.
Christian Ferguson.
Number 14, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Trailblazers are up and running, delivering support for young people since earlier this year. This includes, for example, mental health support, flexible work experience sessions. We've extended the programme for a further year, bringing total funding to £90 million, and the insights from these Trailblazers will inform the national rollout of our Youth Guarantee.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. But does he agree with me that the actions of this government in supporting young people are in stark contrast to the situation in Scotland, where we've had 18 years of SNP neglect, with the college sector suffering a 20% cut in the last 5 years? And does he agree with me that as the energy sector in Scotland transitions to greener forms of energy production, that the jobs and the skills that are needed to bolster that particular industry could be taught at these colleges, and that we risk having a double whammy of young people not being able to take on these important jobs, lecturers being paid off, and our colleges being in dire financial states.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. She's absolutely right to draw attention to the importance of the energy transition. And as I said, the Scottish Government is receiving the largest spending review settlement in real terms since devolution was established. We know that young people in Scotland have the talent, but is their government backing them by giving them the opportunity? We believe a proportion of those funds should be devoted to that. And I'm pleased to say that, for example, BAE Systems will be a major beneficiary of the £10 billion deal to build Type 26 frigates for Norway, a critical investment in European security, and one that I hope the Scottish Government has got round to supporting.
Jim Shaw. Mr Speaker, can I welcome the Secretary of State to his place? Wish him well in the new role he plays, and I'm quite confident that he'll give us all the answers we wish to have. And just to prove that, Northern Ireland continues to have a higher proportion of youth, those not in employment, education or training, some 11 to 13% compared to the UK average. So can I ask the Secretary of State this question? What discussions has the Minister had with the relevant Minister in Northern Ireland to ensure that the opportunities and provide the necessary support to young people in Northern Ireland? Thanks so much.
Well, Mr Speaker, there should be no part of the United Kingdom where we do not give young people the maximum opportunity. I had a good working relationship with the Northern Ireland Executive in my last post, and I hope to have a good working relationship with them in this post for the shared agenda of giving our young people the best possible chance in life.
Question 15, Mr Speaker.
Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. Work coaches are required to tailor work-related requirements to claimants' capabilities and their circumstances, and they can pause them if that is appropriate.
Mr Speaker, my constituent Ross has neurodiversities, and he is in employment working at a garden centre, but his income is supplemented by universal credit. On inadvertently missing an appointment with a job coach over the phone, he was sanctioned, losing out on 2 months' worth of rent and risked being made homeless and losing his job if he didn't have his parents to step in. Can the Minister assure folks like Ross that they will be powered up by our benefit system and not punished when they make innocent mistakes?
Minister? Well, we certainly do want the system to support people like Ross. If work-related requirements are missed, then the reason that's happened should be asked for, and 7 days allowed for an answer. And there should also be a pre-referral check before a sanction referral takes place. If he'd like to send me the details of what happened in that particular case, I'll happily look into it.
We now come to topicals. Catherine Fuchs.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Second time lucky. Question number 1, please.
Mr Speaker, I'm very conscious of the responsibilities of the Department, which touches millions of lives in this country every month. We've joined up skills and employment support in the Department of Work and Pensions to bring the skills system closer to the labour market. And as part of our youth guarantee, we've announced that it will have a backstop jobs guarantee in it. Together with that and Connect to Work, we are both tackling the incentives in the system and providing critical support, because my priority is to have a welfare state which looks after people when times are tough, but also provides a platform of opportunity to help get them out of welfare and into work.
That's from Fuchs.
At the Conservative Party conference, the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury called for the state pension to be means tested. This has caused deep concern in Monmouthshire to pensioners there who've worked hard all their lives and built up modest savings. Under the party opposite's plans, they would risk losing their state pension. Will the Secretary of State confirm that under this Labour government, the state pension will remain available to all?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm happy to say that what she referred to about means testing is not the government's policy, but can the party opposite confirm whether it's theirs? The Chief Secretary let the cat out of the bag. Can she confirm that this is not her policy, or is it that her leader still sticks to the position she said earlier this year, where she said, we are going to look at means testing. Are they still looking at it, or are they not?
The good thing is the government's not responsible for their own problems. Helen Waitress, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, questions are to be answered by the government on this occasion. The Right Honourable Gentleman has an important and not always easy job. I'm sure we all remember the fiasco before the summer when the government tried to make welfare savings and ended up legislating for welfare spending. Since then, the Prime Minister has said that there is a clear moral case for welfare cuts, and the Chancellor has said that she can't leave welfare untouched. Does the Secretary of State agree?
State.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed she didn't want to clarify the position on means testing the state pension. Welfare reform is happening all the time. We passed important changes to the universal credit system, which were voted through by the House. And as I said, we are putting in place important employment support to help not only the long-term sick and disabled people into work, but also young people through many of the policies that I've talked about today.
I can't help but notice that the Secretary of State continues to attempt to deflect from his job of answering the questions. And the fact is, we just heard he won't commit to making the welfare savings that his Prime Minister and his Chancellor has said they need to make. I thought the Prime Minister was meant to be in charge. Getting people off welfare and into work not only saves money, it's morally wrong to condemn people to a life on benefits. Without welfare reform, this country is stuck on Labour's broken record of higher taxes and lower growth. We have even offered to help him. So why won't the Secretary of State commit to making welfare savings?
Mr.
Speaker, we inherited a position which had 3 million people inactive and almost 1 million people not in employment, education or training. We are putting in place critical employment support to help long-term sick and disabled people into work. We have changed the incentives through legislation on the universal credit system, and we are increasing the face-to-face checks in the system, which fell under their watch. What do people think it fell by? Do we think it fell by 10%? Do we think it fell by 30%? It fell by 90% under the system over which her government presided.
Peter Lamb.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Many other honourable members have today outlined the proven track record of access to work in enabling constituents, disabled constituents, to access employment, in addition to the challenges posed by the current shortfall in funding. Can the Minister reassure the House that of the £1 billion worth of additional employment support funding that has been announced this year, the proper funding for access to work remains one of the potential avenues for that funding?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, demand for access to work has risen sharply. I mentioned earlier that spending went up by 17% in the last year, but I don't think access to work can replace a well-designed support programme. That's what we're determined to put in place, and the Department's new independent disability advisory panel will help us work out the best approaches to employment support.
Steve Darling, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the government have made a promise that those transferring from legacy benefits to universal credit would find themselves no worse off. And yet, Liberal Democrat colleagues from all over the country are finding people worse off. Will the Secretary of State give what evidence that they have of how they are supporting those most vulnerable where they are finding themselves worse off? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there is transitional protection available for people making the transition across. And I spoke earlier about the support being provided through the enhanced support journey to people for whom the transition may be particularly difficult. And I'm thinking, for example, about some people on employment and support allowance. If there are particular cases that he's worried about, if he'd like to send me details, I'll very happily look into those.
Foodie.
Mr. Speaker, for too long, too many people in the North East have been left behind due to stubbornly high unemployment. Now, the Inactivity Trailblazer offers an opportunity to tackle the often complex reasons that sit behind this. Can the Minister set out how this will work alongside existing programmes like the New Deal for North East workers to support people into fulfilling productive employment?
Well, Mr Speaker, I thank my honourable friend. People shouldn't be denied the opportunity to work. That is why the Department has backed the inactivity trailblazer in the North East with £10 million this year and a further £10 million next year. Is testing new ways to help people overcome barriers to work. We are determined to turn around the situation that we inherited from the party opposite, and we are working closely with the excellent Mayor for the North East to bring these policies together.
Sarah Dyke.
Speaker, only 30% of people with autism are in work, compared with nearly 55% of disabled people. Charlie, who's celebrating his 31st birthday on Saturday, lives in Boltonsborough with his parents, but like many young adults with autism, he's struggled to find employment. His mother, Jenny, told me yesterday that Charlie is a classic example of wasted talent. So what steps is the Minister taking to ensure adults with autism and other SEN can find fulfilling and secure employment?
The member raises a very important point, and I agree with her about the importance of not wasting talent in the future. That's the reason for the reforms that we're introducing. We set up earlier this year an expert panel to advise us on how best to support people with neurodivergence into employment, building actually on the work of Sir Robert Buckland and his review of autism employment in the last Parliament. We have now received that advice from the expert panel, and we're looking now at how to take that work forward.
Lee Pitcher.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I still have parents in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme coming to me because they're not getting the money their children need. One constituent reports her ex repeatedly self-declaring employment until the CMS catches up, switches onto benefits for a few months, drops to £7 a week and then returns to self-employment to restart that cycle. Online forums, openly trade tips to avoid child maintenance. What will the Minister do to try to close these loopholes and make sure every child gets the support they need?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my honourable friend for his question. The Government plans to consult on changes to the calculation that will capture more income types automatically within that calculation, and where parents willfully avoid their financial obligations, the CMS Financial Investigation Unit does have the powers to act and will investigate. Child maintenance is key to keeping children out of poverty, and we will use these powers wherever necessary.
Ellen Morgan.
Much, Mr Speaker. My constituent's 25-year-old son unfortunately lost his leg in a motorcycle accident and it was amputated above the knee, but he was awarded PIP and a specially adapted car and has been able to rebuild his life. In August this year, he was contacted to say that the PIP and the adapted car would be withdrawn from him. He's clearly and sadly not going to get any better. How can we be in a situation where people whose condition is permanent are having their support withdrawn?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'd be very happy to look into the particular case the honourable member raises. Of course, there is an appeal available, and I'd hope that her constituent will have submitted an appeal, but if she lets me have the details, I'll gladly have a look.
Joe Powell.
Mr Speaker, earlier this month I visited the SPEAR programme in North Kensington, who are doing fantastic work supporting young people back into employment through programmes which the DWP Data Lab have found to have a significant impact. Could the Minister outline how evidence produced by units like the Data Lab will help guide the trailblazer funding to get young people back into work?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The SPEAR programme was one of the first organisations to go through an evaluation with the Data Lab a few years ago. I'm pleased to tell him the findings from that were really positive, and I'm delighted that his constituency is located in one of the youth trailblazer areas, because as we've reiterated several times during this session, it is crucial to do everything we can to help young people into work and address the issue of people not in employment, education or training that we inherited.
Liz Jarvis.
Mr Speaker, many young care leavers living in supported housing want to increase their hours at work but find themselves caught in the benefits trap. And YMCA Eastleigh tells me this is impacting care leavers in my constituency. What recent discussions has the Minister had with Cabinet colleagues on reforms to the tax and benefit system to make work pay for young care leavers?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, there is a problem in the interaction between housing benefit, which provides housing support for people in supported accommodation, and housing support in the universal credit system. That interaction does cause difficulties, and I think that's what she's referring to. We are looking at that at the moment. I'm talking to other parts of government about it, and working with people like the YMCA and Centrepoint to look at the problem, what we can do to fix it.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Many of my constituents in Coatbridge and Bellshill are experiencing delays in migrating to universal credit due to years of Tory mismanagement over our welfare system. This is a stressful time for claimants and a very busy time for the department. So can my right honourable friend outline what steps the department is taking to make sure it is fully resourced so that these delays are processed and those claims the time for those claims is reduced?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Department is prioritising making sure that there is adequate staffing resource available to support claimants and ensure migration is delivered smoothly and on time. But I am concerned to hear what he says about the experience of his own constituents in Coatbridge and Bellshill, and I will look further into this on his behalf and revert back to him.
George. The Trustful Trust recently reported that 3 in 10 people referred to food banks in 2024 were in working households, and that the majority of those, 72%, were on universal credit. What more can the government do to ensure that work pays and that we can take low-paid workers out of poverty?
Mr Speaker, I recently spoke at an event hosted by this organisation in Parliament. I was pleased to say that in their report they said there had been a small drop in the use of food banks over the past year. We have put the Household Support Fund on a proper basis, now the Crisis and Resilience Fund, for the next 3 years to support those families in the most desperate need.
Mr Speaker, giving sick and disabled people agency and drawing on lived experience sets the only path to getting policy right so that they can access work, appointments and get out of their homes, avoiding worklessness, health decline and isolation, with their mobility support needs recognised through PIP. Further to his previous answer, will the Minister ensure that any policy reforms to the PIP mobility payments will be fully co-produced with sick and disabled people?
Minister. Well, I can reassure my honourable friend that the review of the PIP assessment, including the mobility element of that benefit, will be undertaken fully in co-production with disabled people and disabled people's organisations, and I'll be setting out very shortly how the review that I'm going to be leading will be undertaken.
John Mayo. Businesses crying out, Mr Speaker, that the Employment Rights Bill is going to cost jobs. Now the Tony Blair Institute, the spiritual home of the Secretary of State, says it will cripple the jobs market, especially for young people, and it's not a laughing matter. So what is the Secretary of State's view? Will the Employment Rights Bill help his department to increase employment, or will it cost even more jobs?
So staged.
Mr Speaker, it should be no surprise that the Labour Party supports better rights at work for people. History is replete with warnings that better employment rates would result in fewer jobs. These were the warnings that the party opposite gave when we introduced the national minimum wage many years ago. Of course, it is important that when legislating on these issues, we do it closely in consultation with employers, and that is precisely what we intend to do.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. 47% of children in my Liverpool Riverside constituency live in poverty. The Minister has mentioned that he will consider all levers. Does that include speaking with the Treasury to look at a wealth tax to bring in much needed money into the Treasury to remove the two-child cap?
Mr Speaker, as we've discussed a number of times, of course we want to reduce child poverty. She will not be surprised to hear that when it comes to tax, this is a matter for the Chancellor and not for me.
Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. May I welcome the Secretary of State to his place and wish him well. Last week I attended a WASPI campaign drop-in and was informed that there are currently 4,320 women in Dewsbury and Batley affected by the WASPI scandal. This was previously higher, but many have already passed away without justice. On the 27th of July, I wrote to the former Secretary of State regarding her support for WASPI campaign after being contacted by over 40 of my constituents, but I have yet to receive a response. With the government still refusing to engage in civil mediation to deliver justice to the Waspy women, will the new Secretary of State reconsider meeting campaigners to find a just way forward?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Minister for Pensions met with representatives of the Waspy campaign. She did so to hear from their experiences directly and was the first minister to do so in 8 years. I will look into the details of the letter he mentions.
Total crime.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome the Secretary of State to his office and thank the Under-Secretary of State for our visit to the DWP Debt and Fraud Centre in Minor Hill in your constituency recently. 95 jobs there, doing a tremendous work across the UK, proving that civil service job dispersal does work. Isn't this a template for other government departments and an example to the Scottish Government, SNP Scottish Government, which has dispersed no jobs, no power and no funds from Edinburgh?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I endorse everything that my honourable friend has said. I did have a fantastic visit to what is a very beautiful constituency that he is fortunate enough to represent, and it showed exactly what can happen through our Places for Growth initiative that looks to relocate jobs out of London and into places such as Stornoway.
Rachel Gilmore.
Mr. Speaker, in my constituency of Tiverton and Minehead, I've met with many pensionable-age constituents, most of them who live on the Duck estate, who've lost entitlement to pension credit by as little as 50 pence. Would the Honourable Minister agree with me that the pension credit, ESA and PIP systems could all do with more common sense and a little less of a computer says no mentality?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable lady for her question. I think in general lots of life could do with less computer says no, so on that basis we all agree. On the specifics of the question she raises about pension credit, the nature of the system is obviously that it's providing a guaranteed level of income. It's not setting out an entitlement like universal credit, so there does have to be a limit somewhere, and I'm afraid that does mean that some people will always be on one side of it. But what you don't want to see in a system is too many things in that winner-takes-all perspective. But I take the point she raises.
Lee Ingham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Drake Hall Women's Prison in my constituency of Stafford, Eccleshall and the Villages, and they have a brilliant initiative there, a Holford's Training Centre, to support people into employment once they leave the prison estate. They support people all over the country, not just in my constituency, and I'm interested to find out whether the Secretary of State could let me know what conversations are happening with the Ministry of Justice around schemes like this, supporting or expanding them.
Secretary of State.
Well, I thank her for her question. It sounds like an excellent initiative, and of course it is important, if we are to rehabilitate prisoners, that they get training and the chance to get into constructive employment after their sentence. I'm sure that applies not just to the prison in her constituency, but throughout the country.
Ambassador Jecti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alan Marnes is a constituent of mine in Southcote who has staunchly campaigned since 2002 on the issue of the lack of indexation for pre-1997 pension rights, having been one of the 140,000 people who lost their occupational pension. I wrote to the Secretary of State asking whether the newly revived Pensions Commission will address the issue of failed pension funds more than 2 months ago and have still not received a response. So would the Secretary of State agree to meet with me and Alan to provide some much-needed clarity on such a long-standing issue?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not absolutely clear whether the particular case that the honourable member is raising relates to people within the PPF and the FAS, or is relating to a pre-97 indexation within a solvent pension scheme. But if you'd like to write with me to the details, I'll absolutely make sure that I come back to it.
Steve Witherden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 3 children in my constituency are growing up in poverty. With the budget approaching, what discussions has he had with the Chancellor of the Exchequer about scrapping the 2-child limit, a policy widely recognised as one of the biggest drivers of child poverty in Britain today?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've already taken action to reduce child poverty, extending free school meals to all families on universal credit. Of course, we will explore other avenues to do this. We want to reduce child poverty, in stark contrast to the record of the party opposite.
So Oliver Dalden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When my constituents move into new social housing, they find it stripped of perfectly good white goods, curtains, carpets and so on. What can the government do to address this? Because it's driving my constituents further into poverty and benefit dependency. It's also environmentally destructive. Surely there's a way through this, and can I call on him to work with others across government to address it?
Minister.
The right honourable gentleman raises an important issue. It is something that might perhaps be better discussed at MHCLG questions, but as he asks us to pick this up cross departments, I would be very happy to do so. What I would say to him is that the Crisis and Resilience Fund, formerly the Household Support Fund, is in place to support people setting up in new homes, as are indeed grants that are available from housing associations directly.
That completes questions. Let front bench. Point of orders come after. Don't worry. After steps accused.
See you later.
Right, we now come to the urgent question. Chef Secretary of State Andrew Barr.
Mr. Speaker, to ask the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero if he will make a statement on the future of the North Sea oil and gas industry.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The North Sea will be at the heart of Britain's energy future. For decades, its workers, businesses and communities have helped power our country and our world, and they will do so for decades to come. The oil and gas industry has lost around a third of its entire workforce in the last decade, as oil and gas production has declined. A plan is now needed. And that's why in March we consulted on a framework for building a world-leading offshore clean energy industry in the North Sea, alongside managing existing oil and gas fields for their lifespan. We'll respond to that consultation in the coming weeks. And alongside that, we published our Clean Energy Jobs Plan, which sets out over 400,000 more good jobs to be created across the UK, including 40,000 in Scotland by the end of the decade, facilitated thanks to record investments in clean energy and the certainty that our plans have created to see over £50 billion worth of private investment since July 2024. Now, turning, Mr. Speaker, to today's news. Colleagues in the House will be aware that Petrofac Limited have for some time been working on a restructure relating to their global portfolio. This restructuring plan failed following the unexpected termination of a contract by Tenant, a Dutch transmission company. And at 7 a.m. today, holding company Petrofac Limited announced that it will be entering administration. Now, while obviously disappointing for the company, this is the product of long-standing issues with their global business. Contrary to misleading reports today, the UK arm of Petrofac has not entered administration and is continuing to operate as normal, as an in-demand business with a highly skilled workforce and many successful contracts. Indeed, only last month, Petrofac's UK arm extended 2 significant contracts, demonstrating this business has a viable future. The announcement today only covers the top-level holding company, Petrofac Limited, which has no employees. The Petrofac Group has faced long-standing challenges, including a high-profile £77 million financial penalty imposed in 2021 following a serious fraud office investigation into bribery. Now, we understand that there is reason to be optimistic about a commercial resolution, including the UK arm, and the Government has been and will remain in close contact with the company. And I repeat this to the House. The UK business has not entered administration. It is successful and growing, and it will continue to operate as normal.
Andrew Barr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another week, yet another hammer blow to our North Sea oil and gas industry, another gut punch to energy workers, another blow to our energy security. And, Mr. Speaker, the blame, whatever the Minister says today, lies squarely with this Labour government. Today, the energy giant, they don't like to hear it, Mr. Speaker, but today, the energy giant Petrofac has entered administration, casting doubt over the future of their 2,000 employees in Scotland, as their global HQ is in Aberdeen, and countless more supported indirectly through the supply chain. This is a company that, as the Minister has said, has had issues for many years. But the hostile environment created by this government in the UK continental shelf has made operating here for far too many companies nigh on impossible. Since the 2024 general election, there have been thousands of redundancies in our offshore energy industry. Harbour Energy completed a new round of redundancies just last month. With depressing regularity, Mr. Speaker, we hear of more job losses in the North Sea. Whether that be at Harbour Energy, Apache, Hunting or Petrofac, each job lost means uncertainty for a family, a mortgage jeopardised, investment fleeing our communities, and our world-class supply chains and skilled workforce pushed towards extinction. Minister, how many more of these will it take for the Secretary of State for Energy to change course? These are political choices. This is a manufactured decline. As a direct result of the hostile trading environment, the close for business sign is hanging over the UK continental shelf. From the energy profits levy extension and increase to the ban on new licences to the refusal to defend the government's decision on Rosebank and Jackdaw, the odds are being stacked against the North Sea industry, damaging the business environment, threatening investment, harming our economy and undermining our energy security. These are political choices that have resulted in job losses. So can I ask the Minister, what steps are being taken to support Petrofac's HQ employees in Aberdeen? How many more jobs have to be lost across the industry for this government to change course? When will the thousands of jobs promised through GB Energy for Aberdeen and around the United Kingdom materialise? And will he personally act and ask his boss, the Secretary of State for Energy, to change course? Or is he content to sacrifice Aberdeen, the North East and our energy industry on this vainglorious campaign to destroy our fossil fuel industry?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I say to the honourable gentleman that on the issue of Petrofac, I just say that he should be careful with his tone. To come here and try to undermine efforts to find a buyer for the UK arm, to talk down a successful business, which I've just outlined is a successful and growing business in the North Sea, is deeply irresponsible. There have been long-standing issues at this company, and as a former minister in Desnes, he of all people should know of these long-standing issues, and he'll be well aware of that given his previous role. We all have a responsibility here across the House to support this company at the moment, not to undermine it, and to send a positive message to those workers, the suppliers and the customers that the UK arm is continuing to operate as normal. All the signs are that there is a viable long-term future for this company, but not if we have comments like the honourable gentleman has put forward today undermining that business. Now, Mr. Speaker, on the wider question of the North Sea, he knows as well as anyone, or he should know, that under his parties in government, we lost over a third of the jobs in the North Sea. He wants to pretend that this transition arrived in July 2024, but he was in government. He was in government when these jobs were going, and they failed time and time and time again to come up with any credible plan for how they manage the future of the North Sea. We will not do that. We will come up with a plan, and that's why we're building the industries of the future on hydrogen, on carbon capture, on offshore wind, on the supply chains, the very investments that he and his honourable friends on that side turn their back against time and time again. They're turning their backs on the future of the energy story in the North Sea, more interested in exploiting problems than actually solving them. And time again, they have learned no lessons from their time in government when they left these workers without a credible plan. We will not do the same again.
Patricia first.
Mr. Speaker, and I wonder if my honourable friend can outline to the House how this government is delivering the Clean Energy Jobs Plan, which will see 40,000 new jobs in the clean energy industries in Scotland by 2030. A very welcome move, and I'm sure one that will be welcomed around the Chamber. But can he also advise what support will be given to that plan by the Scottish Government?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend makes an important point about building up the industries of the future. Look, I've said on a number of occasions we should rightly be proud of 6 decades of oil and gas in the north east of Scotland. We should be proud of the work that that workforce has achieved, but we should also recognise that we have been in transition now for a long time, and building up the jobs of the future in carbon capture, in hydrogen, in offshore wind, in supply chains. These are how we make sure that there's a long-term, viable, sustainable future in the north east, alongside oil and gas for many decades to come. The work that the Scottish Government needs to do in this space is particularly around improving the skills offer, so that there are more of Scotland's young people who can take up the 40,000 jobs that we'll create over the coming years. That's a huge opportunity for Scotland's young people, but only if we improve the system of education we have in Scotland.
Pippa Helling, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is worrying news. Petrofac is one of the North Sea's largest offshore contractors. but after years of financial difficulty is entering administration today. Whilst I cannot share the Honourable Member for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardin's desire to ditch the Climate Change Act, I do share his concern for these 2,000 jobs in Scotland and those workers who face uncertainty about their future. So the Secretary of State must act swiftly to find a sustainable path forward, hopefully secure a buyer and safeguard these skilled jobs. And this underlines why the Liberal Democrats have called for an independent Just Transition Commission, putting oil and gas workers and local communities front and centre. And it was good to see the much-awaited publication of the Government's Clean Energy Jobs Plan last week. However, we do know job creation is not happening fast enough to keep up with job losses in the North Sea. So can the Secretary of State and the Minister confirm what will be done to fill that gap in the meantime, in the short term, and deliver a genuinely just transition that keeps these skilled workers powering Britain's clean energy future?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, can I just say, first of all, what a contrast it is with someone responding to this concerning issue, as she rightly says, in a serious way and not talking down the industry. And I think this is actually where this House should stand taller and recognise that this is a company that's doing good work, that there are workers right now, 2,000 of them, out in the North Sea carrying out their duties. We want to make sure that that is a viable future for the company, and we're doing everything that we can in that space. And all the signs are that it is a growing, successful business. We should recognise that and talk it up, not talk it down, as the Conservative Party seem hell-bent on doing. Can I just say on her wider point, she's right to say that, of course, the future of clean energy jobs is tens of thousands across Scotland and hundreds of thousands across the UK, but that we need to ramp those jobs up as quickly as possible and make sure that people can achieve those jobs. We're doing what we can around looking at the skills framework in place, but also making sure that through investments we're making in Great British Energy, those jobs come forward much faster, and that people are supported to move from jobs in oil and gas into those jobs where we know there's a real correlation in skills in the future. We're picking this work up after a failure of the previous government to have any plan. We're moving as fast as we can, and we'll say more on that North Sea plan in the coming weeks.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. And I have to say this is a very underpowered, urgent question, a bit similar to a two-stroke engine that we're attached to our rowing boat.
One of us is going to sit down. This is going to be me. When I decide on an urgent question, I don't need to be questioned about how urgent, whether it's two-stroke or a 50cc. Actually, some of us actually think it might be 3 litre.
Also, of course, referring to the opposition, the shadow minister, who knows full well that he has missed the story here. Petrofac went into administration because the Dutch government cut a contract for offshore wind farm developments, and I dare say that raises concerns about the viability, the finance and supply chain for the offshore wind farm industry. But Petrofac, as the Shadow Minister well knows, as the Minister has pointed out, is successful in the UK, has 2,000 jobs in the UK, has contracts in the UK, so we need less scaremongering from this underpowered opposition and more assurance from the Minister that he will look after these jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just reflect on something my honourable friend said, that look, this is a global company. It has not had its troubles to seek for some time. It was subject to an investigation back in 2017. It has gone through a number of restructuring routes since then. Ultimately, that process came to an end when they lost a significant contract from Tenet, one of the Dutch transmission owners. So this is a company that has faced global headwinds for some time. But the UK business, and I'll repeat this to the House again and again, the UK business has a viable long-term future. It is already growing. It is successful. And we have a responsibility, I think, across this House to talk up British businesses, to talk up the workers in those jobs at the moment, not to talk them down.
Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I convey in the strongest possible terms to the junior minister the anger and anxiety that is felt by my constituents in Aberdeen, because right now they are providing energy security to each and every one of us on these aisles. They are providing revenue to his treasury, and yet the only reward, the only certainty that they seem to have on this government's watch is that of looming job losses. So may I ask, and he shakes his head, may I ask him to come to Aberdeen and explain to my constituents when he is going to listen to trade unions, to academics, to the workers and to industry and protect that industry going forward for our energy security, but also for Scotland's economy?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm in Aberdeen regularly and do meet his constituents who are working right now in renewables and carbon capture and hydrogen jobs, as well as his constituents who work in oil and gas, his constituents who benefit from investments that Great British Energy will make, for example, which he failed to vote for, and who also tell me that after a long period of time of having no credible plan on the... He can shout me down all he wants. He can shout me down all he wants. He asked a question.
I'm just going to say to the honourable member, I brought you in early because I thought it was right to your constituents and you'd applied for a UQ. But I do expect a little respect, even if you don't like the answer, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. He asks a serious question, and I'm trying to give him an answer if he would but listen for a few moments. We do take seriously the issue of job losses. Of course we do, and I do take them very seriously. But what we have to recognise is that there have been 70,000 jobs lost over the past 10 years without a credible plan on the future of the North Sea. We're going to deliver that. We're delivering new jobs in the energy future alongside that. But I would also just say to him, I'm somewhat confused what the SNP's policy is on this, because as far as I understood it, it is exactly the same policy as this government has, which is to look at the licensing position. Now, if he's telling us now that the SNP's position has changed, then that's news to me and I suspect to the House. But of course, they haven't published the draft energy strategy that's been in draft form for 2 years, so it's hard for anyone to know.
Holly Billington.
Speaker, what steps is the Minister taking to ensure that the UK arm of the company, which is an in-demand business with a highly skilled workforce and many successful contracts, has a long-term future in the UK, particularly in the context of our Clean Energy Jobs Plan announced earlier last week, and indeed, as my right honourable friend from the Western Isles pointed out, some of the risks around the development of offshore wind in Holland?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. Look, we have obviously been liaising with the company over quite a long period of time on the restructuring, and indeed the previous government did as well. We've been looking at this issue. We'll continue to work very closely with them to make sure that there is a viable long-term future for the UK part, but it's an in-demand business. As I say, just last month they expanded some of their contracts, which shows that they are successful, and of course they have a highly skilled workforce working in a huge range of jobs right across oil and gas. The wider question about investment into renewables is also one that we should take seriously, which is we have a huge opportunity in the United Kingdom to capitalise on the economic opportunities that come from offshore wind, from onshore wind, from hydrogen and carbon capture, but it requires consistency and a view that the UK is a safe place to invest, things that are put at threat by the party opposite.
John Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Anyone who has met businesses in Aberdeen will know that they rely on the oil and gas sector. This net zero at all costs policy by this Labour government is a disaster for high quality skills and jobs in the North East and across Scotland. So what urgent action will the government take to restore confidence and stability in the energy sector?
Well, I reject his assertion that this government is somehow following a course without looking at the evidence. Clearly, oil and gas is a crucial part of our energy mix and will be for decades to come. We've been really clear on that. But so too is building up what comes next. And that does mean investing in the supply chains that so often were not part of building the infrastructure that we have in our waters. We towed things in and switched them on and had none of the jobs that went with it. We're determined to change that. But that comes with having a credible industrial strategy, and it also comes with a long-term plan for the future of the North Sea, something that we didn't have under 14 years of the previous government.
Incredibly, Mr. Speaker, it's now 8 months since the Prime Minister announced £200 million from the National Well Fund for the industrial future of Grangemouth. I've had meetings with numerous companies that have proposals and are frankly impatient to get started. When will this money be spent? When will these jobs come to my town? Because all there is to show far is the bones of an unjust transition and industrial devastation.
Well, we absolutely have been looking at a number of proposals. I met 5 companies who are the front runners for investment from the National Wealth Fund, along with the Scottish Government Minister for Energy. There are a number of those propositions that are being taken forward, and I hope we will have an announcement to make in due course. But of course, what we've been trying to do here is not just spend £200 million on the first thing that comes along, but to find the genuinely long-term viable industrial opportunities that deliver jobs at Grangemouth, not just for a year or 2 years, but long into the future. Because the honourable gentleman is absolutely right to say that for far too long that site has been victim from a lack of planning, and it is an example of a just transition done wrongly. We want to make that different by having a serious plan for long-term jobs on that site. The NWF has brought companies to the table and will deliver an announcement on that in due course.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. While I accept the Minister's comments about Petrofac, it is a very worrying day for not just the 2,000 workers whose jobs are at stake, but for the entire North East economy in Scotland, for the oil economy. And there are 2 things which are missing, which we desperately need in Scotland. And one is investment in jobs and the skills that we will need for those renewable industries that the Minister talks about. And the other is a reform of the taxation system, of the windfall tax, to make sure it's consistent and that we have consistency in the North Sea. So can the Minister tell us what this government is going to do about those things?
Well, can I thank the Honourable Lady? She's right, of course, that any announcements like this are worrying for those directly involved, but obviously for the wider community, and I entirely recognise that point. She's right to say that investing in the jobs of the future is critical. We've worked with the Scottish Government, because we do work with the Scottish Government, to deliver joint funding for transition support so that workers can get the direct skills support they need to move from an oil and gas job into a renewables job. That's really important. But we do need to see much more in upskilling the next generation who can take advantage of the jobs that we'll create in the clean energies of the future. On the question of taxation, I'm afraid that's a matter for the Chancellor.
Graham Downey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My own constituency in Dunfermline Dollar has SMEs and large businesses working in renewables, working in oil and gas, solar, onshore wind and offshore wind. Does the Minister agree with me that some of the outbursts today we've seen from the opposite sides, from both the Conservatives and the SNP, will do nothing but undermine confidence that those companies face? And furthermore, can he please reassure me that he is working extensively with colleges in Scotland and with employers to make sure that we do see that transition from skills from oil and gas into renewables, so that people in my constituency can take full opportunities of the investments this government is making?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right that there are huge opportunities coming. And look, when I say we should be proud of the history of oil and gas, we should also be really proud of what that industry is doing to transition into the future. We need to do much more to make sure those jobs are delivered now. But certainty and confidence that the plan isn't going to change overnight is critical for how we get private sector investment into the UK to deliver on these jobs. It's also why it's so important we look at skills in the round. And look, I do have to say, despite outbursts today, the SNP in Holyrood and this UK government are working closely on making sure those skills opportunities are delivered. Would I like that to go further? Of course I would like that to go further. I hope we'll have a change of government and can make that happen. But this only works if we have a serious approach to recognising the challenges and building the jobs of the future and making sure people can take advantage of those opportunities right across Scotland.
We urgently need to restore confidence and stability in our oil and gas sector, or we'll be here again and again as more and more businesses suffer and more jobs are lost, whether that's in my Gordon and Buchan constituency, across North East Scotland, Scotland as a whole, or the UK as a whole. There are oil and gas and energy jobs everywhere in the UK. The future of Petrofac's 2,000 skilled and expertise staff, but also the indirect jobs that rely on them, are now at risk, and are at risk based on the Petrofac being able to find a buyer for its North Sea assets. Does the Minister think that the job of finding a buyer has been made more or less likely, given what the government has created, in the industry words, being the most unstable fiscal environment in the world?
I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I have enormous respect for the Honourable Lady, but this is not the day to be talking down this particular company. Now, she can make the wider points about this government's policy, and I totally recognise that, but this is a hugely important moment not to undermine a successful and growing company, to make sure that the suppliers and companies and customers of Petrofac continue to support that business because it is operating, as of today, as normal. And I think it is incumbent on all of us to make sure that that continues to be the case. We are obviously making sure that we're working closely with the company to make sure that outcome is delivered, because she's right to say about the wider impact. But those 2,000 jobs have continued as normal today. The supply chain jobs that rely on those 2,000 jobs have continued as normal today. And any suggestion to the contrary is just not correct.
Christine Sullivan.
Does my honourable friend agree with me that it is important to speak responsibly, with care and accuracy around the successful UK arm of Petrofac, because to do otherwise will only serve to undermine the business and job security that we all want to see across this House? And what steps is he taking to ensure it has a long-term future in the UK?
Well, I thank my honourable friend. And look, of course, I come to this House and rightly expect to be challenged on this government's policies, and a back and forward that is as strong as we have had is important. But I think in this one instance on this company, separate from any view that members might have on the wider policies of this government, it is important that we come together where we can and say this is a strong, successful, growing company. It is in all of our interests right across this House to talk up the importance of this company continuing to be successful, so that a buyer is found or another commercial resolution is found, so that those jobs can be maintained. That's surely in all of our interests.
Kirsty Blackman.
Every single one of us has been criticising government policy, not criticising Petrofac, not criticising the expertise and the workers at Petrofac, not criticising any of the workers that are working in our oil and gas industry. The Minister says that he's been spending time in Aberdeen. Does he have any idea how it feels to be in Aberdeen just now? Does he have any idea how this is just another hammer blow that is coming? And it is because of the government's policies. It is because of the fact that there is this massive gap. Skilled workers in the oil and gas industry will just go abroad. They will go away elsewhere. It does not matter whether or not we retrain them. The jobs are not there for them right now. What is he going to do to plug this gap? What is he going to do to keep these skilled workers in Scotland, in Aberdeen, in these islands, and not drive them away?
Well, look, I take her first point with a pinch of salt after her second point, where she said that this comes as a hammer blow to the community. There is no hammer blow. Those jobs have been protected. And there are 2,000 workers today waking up doing the same job as they were doing last week. So I take a bit of a pinch of salt with that point. She's right, of course, to say, look, I am in Aberdeen. I don't pretend. She's an Aberdeen MP. Of course, she hears from her constituents much more than I am when I'm there. But I've made an effort to be there as often as possible to hear the concerns, but also to recognise that that is exactly why we need to move further and faster than we have done for the past 14 years of the previous government, 18 years of the Scottish Government, to put a credible plan in place for the future of those jobs. That does mean investing in future jobs, but also making sure that the processes are in place so people can take advantage of those jobs much more easily. Passporting, something which was stuck in the mud for years, is now being delivered because we helped to unlock it. Now, there's a lot more to do, and we'll say that in the coming weeks when we publish our Future of the North Sea plan, but we are the ones driving forward investment that creates the jobs of the future, and I'm afraid other parties, and I didn't until today count her party as one of those, are harking back to the past rather than recognising the jobs of the future need to go hand in hand with good, well-paid oil and gas jobs in the short term.
Dr Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I thank the Minister for his statement and the confidence he has shown in these workers, absolutely. We've heard from the SNP, the difference between Labour and SNP just now is that SNP do want to scrap the energy profits levy, but they don't know what they're going to replace it with. They just want to replace it with something that's fairer. Does he agree that, does he think this is the kind of leadership we need in the oil and gas sector?
Well, I say to my honourable friend, we recognise that the energy profits levy will come to an end. We've consulted on what the future of that looks like with industry. It's a matter for the Chancellor to obviously outline tax policy as it is standard practice in this House. It's not for me to say that. But I would say, look, there is a broader question here about how we make sure we're driving forward investment, and talking down the investment in carbon capture, hydrogen, offshore wind and the supply chains is not the way to drive forward the jobs of the future alongside these critical, important oil and gas jobs that will be with us for decades to come.
Sir Bernard Jones.
Mr Speaker, can I ask the Minister why does he refuse to issue new licences for the exploitation of new gas fields and new oil fields in the North Sea, because that is what the industry would like, and that is what the country would like, because we'd like a stronger balance of payments, we'd like more tax revenues for the exchequer, and we'd like a future for the North Sea oil industry. What is the point of choking off our own North Sea oil and gas industry when we have to import those fuels from other countries?
Well, we will respond to the consultation question on the future of licensing in due course. It was our manifesto commitment on which this government was elected to not issue new licences to explore new fields, but we will support existing licences and existing fields for the lifetime that they exist for, and that remains our position. What we also have said, though, is that that is about how we manage the future of the basin, which has been in decline for 20 plus years now. We hit peak oil and peak gas in 1999 and 2000 respectively. We have been in transition for a long time. That means investing in the industries that come next alongside oil and gas.
Crux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And following on from that question, can I just say how reassured I am that it is this minister looking at this, fighting for those jobs for those people in Aberdeen, but also acutely aware that the previous government did not take full account of what impact the Shadow Minister raised Rosebank. We now know that Rosebank would create 50 times more climate-harming gases than it originally admitted to the previous government that it would do. And we know that the climate crisis is one of the biggest drags on growth that there is. So can I ask the Minister just to set out, I know he is as committed as we all are to protecting jobs and protecting the planet. What more can we do within our supply chains to support the work that he is doing and get those growth and get the just transition that this country desperately needs without Rosebank?
Well, I think the House will understand that I won't be drawn at all on applications that are currently in for decision, so I won't comment at all on that specific application. But I would take the broader point. It was raised earlier that the net zero economy is growing 3 times faster than the economy at large. It is our economic future. I was at the G20 in South Africa recently, where ministers across the world were talking about the opportunities of the clean power transition in their own countries. This is the economic opportunity of the 21st century. It's also how we deliver on climate leadership, which does still matter, contrary to what opposition politicians might now think. But it is also only right if we deliver it with a genuinely just transition for those workers that have powered our country for the past 60 years. We have seen where transitions have not been done well. The previous government failed to put in place any kind of plan. We're not going to do the same. We're going to deliver a plan that delivers a just transition and also our economic future.
Mr. Speaker, I hear the Minister's reassuring words, but surely he can understand the worry of the workers waking up this morning to the news that they heard. And it's not just warm words that are causing the problem, it's policies. It's the energy profits levy, it's the ban on exploration. And it's not just me that's saying this. Here's a list of some of the people that are concerned. The Port of Aberdeen, Robert Gordon University, the North Sea Transition Authority, the Tony Blair Institute, the Scottish Affairs Committee. So what is the Minister going to do in terms of addressing these policy problems?
Can I thank him for his tone, and just to repeat that I absolutely accept the point that he makes. Of course, I'm saying today that we can be absolutely clear about the viable future of these 2,000 workers, and we should be positive about it, but that does nothing to those who might be worried about it, and of course I recognise that point. I just think it's also important that we talk up the future potential of this company. On the point on EPL, which I'm just going to come to, look, we accept that the EPL will come to an end. We've consulted with industry on what the future of that looks like to make sure that price spikes do result in the Treasury gaining some value from that. I think that's a principle that his party and mine are agreed on. That's rightly a matter for the Chancellor to take forward. But I think if he is in favour of a tax cut for oil and gas, it is quite important that he says where will that significant amount of revenue come from to fund the public services that he and I rely on.
Mary Glendon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's mention of tiebacks in a recent consultation earlier this year. But their development is important because it reduces costs and extends the life of existing critical infrastructure. However, many existing hubs are reaching the end of their life. We may miss the opportunities that are in front of us. So will the Minister look at tiebacks as a pragmatic step to help aid the transition? Well,
I thank my honourable friend, who is always a great champion for this industry, and Although we often talk quite rightly about Aberdeen and the north east of Scotland, she's also right to champion her own community, which has a significant number of oil and gas workers in it as well. And I always welcome her straightforward challenge to me on many of these points. I'm not going to get into the detail of the response to the consultation, which we'll publish in due course, but we've been really clear that we want a credible long-term plan for the future of the North Sea. That's why we consulted on a range of factors, not just the future licensing position, and we will come to a pragmatic position on what the future of the North Sea looks like.
Sir Julian Lewis.
How many years does the government estimate we shall have to keep importing foreign oil and gas as a result of not being allowed fully to exploit our own supplies?
Well, perhaps I would switch the question back to him and say, for how many years have we already been importing oil and gas? Because this comes to the fundamental point here. The party opposite wants to pretend that in July last year somehow we switched to becoming a net importer of oil and gas. That is not what happened. Over many, many years, his party oversaw that transition. And look, I recognise the geology of the basin means that to some degree there would not have been different decisions if we had been in government. That's the nature of the basin. What we could have done differently was see that the transition was happening and deliver the economic opportunities with what comes next. That's what we're going to do.
Mr Speaker, does the Minister share my concerns at the way that Reform and the Conservatives deny the reality of climate change and deny the fact that the best way to protect energy jobs and to protect people's jobs is to follow the Green Jobs Plan? And does he also agree with me that nuclear, such as Heysham 1 and 2 in my constituency, and if I get my way, new nuclear at Heysham, are vital to the Clean Energy Jobs Plan?
Well, I was going to say this might be a note of consensus across the House, but then, of course, I remembered the SNP have this ideological objection to nuclear in Scotland, so they won't benefit from the economic opportunities that come from thousands of well-paid, skilled, trade unionised jobs in nuclear. But we do believe that there is a long-term future for nuclear. That's why we announced funding for Sizewell C. It's why we concluded the SMR programme. It's why we have been working with the US government to bring forward private funding partnerships to make sure we're building the latest technology here in the UK. It comes with thousands of jobs. It helps deliver on our energy security long into the future, and it also helps tackle the climate, because this party does believe that the climate crisis is an existential threat to our future. We should do everything we can to tackle it.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So thousands more jobs at risk alongside the thousands of families and jobs at risk at the Lindsey Oil Refinery in Lincolnshire, all because of this government's policies about net stupid zero. And yet the Minister talks warmly about the growth prospects for Petrofac. To grow, you need an industry. To have an industry, you need more oil and gas licences. So will the Minister change course and now allow the exploration and more licences to produce oil and gas in the North Sea?
Well, I'm not sure there was a hugely coherent argument there, because on the one hand he seems to say that the future might be in these clean energy jobs, but then he says, well, they might not be delivered fast enough, so we shouldn't bother doing it. Look, we think there is an important long-term future in delivering clean energy, including in his constituency, where many of these supply chain jobs will be delivered. He's against that economic investment. He should explain to his constituents and to the wider country why they want to make this country more energy dependent, not less energy dependent, why they are against the economic opportunities that this brings. And look, even if we disagree on the climate crisis, which I find staggering given all the evidence, but I accept he might bury his head in the sand on it, we should at least agree that there's a huge economic opportunity and an opportunity to maintain our energy security.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I recently visited Baxton Gas Terminal in the Honourable Member for North Norfolk's constituency on the North Sea coast. It already provides up to 1/3 of our nation's gas supply. It is ideally placed to be a carbon capture and hydrogen hub. The Minister has just talked about jobs, and I do want those jobs in my area. So would the Minister recognise the vital role that the east of England plays, and would he back Baxton's plans to ensure its low-carbon future and help secure good local jobs?
My honourable friend is right to highlight that this was a huge opportunity that the previous government talked a lot about but actually didn't move forward on delivering. We had in the spending review significant amounts of investment to move forward the carbon capture clusters, and we followed that up with specific investments over the past few months, and I've been privileged to visit some of these sites and to see the potential for maintaining existing jobs in industry while building jobs of the future in carbon capture. We are hugely positive about the future vision solution for carbon capture across the country as a way to tackle our emissions, to help us get to net zero, but also to create good industrial jobs in the process.
Martin Bickles.
I thank the Minister for the engagement we've had over the future of Lindsey Oil Refinery in my constituency. Is he in a position to give any indication of what support the government might give and when a final decision might be taken? And would you at least acknowledge that new licences in the North Sea would actually offer job opportunities for those people whose jobs are at risk?
Well, can I also thank him for the engagement that we've had on this issue? Obviously, the failure of the previous company that was running the Crux Lindsey Oil Refinery has had a really significant impact. We've been working to make sure that there is the process that the official receiver is going through is concluded as soon as possible. It's for them to decide who the potential buyers are. There is a short list of credible candidates that they are looking at. But given the nature of the insolvency, it's not for the government's decision to decide what's built there next. On his second point, look, I genuinely don't think that the licensing question is the future of jobs for that particular site. We want to build up an industry in that site for the future, that those are long-term sustainable jobs. And all the evidence we've seen about managing the future of the North Sea Basin is that while that's important for many years to come, it's not the long-term future for the North Sea.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's very important to increase the number of skilled jobs in renewables and in hydrogen. I welcome the Minister's mention of the plan. Can he say more about the Government's Clean Jobs plan? And in particular, can he say more about training and development for younger staff and also retraining for existing staff?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for the question, and particularly for mentioning, as he did at the end, retraining, because what we're seeing across the energy system at the moment is huge opportunities for people in the middle of careers to transfer into the energy system. We've been looking just in the past few weeks about a scheme to support veterans leaving the armed forces to get jobs building infrastructure. There's huge opportunities there if we can capitalise on this clean energy transition. We also need to invest in the future of the next generation of workers. In England, we're looking at technical training colleges to make that happen. Funding goes to the Scottish Government to do that in Scotland, and of course to the Welsh Government as well. The future of our energy system is clean energy. We want to make sure we've got the jobs and the training opportunities that go with it, so that the people of the country get the economic advantage as well as the country getting the energy security.
Dr. Ellicha.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Petrofac news today has nothing to do with UK oil and gas policy. This is a company with a long history of financial challenges, mismanagement, fined millions for bribery, lost £6 billion in value since 2012, and now lost a contract with the Netherlands. Does the Minister therefore agree with me that any attempt to claim otherwise is blatant political point scoring by the Tories and others with a head-in-the-sand climate denial agenda, and is a distraction from what really matters, which is ensuring that every worker's job who is affected by today's news is properly supported?
Well, look, I agree with the Honourable Lady on the wider point here, which is that, as I outlined in my opening answer, Petrofac has not had its troubles to seek. She outlined a number of those in her question there. But I want to reiterate that the UK arm of this business is a successful growing business. We want to make sure that that continues and that there's a buyer or another solution to make sure that that can continue long into the future. I think others will seek to politicise this for their own political narratives. I think it's incumbent on all of us to send as positive a message as we can to the workers, the suppliers and the customers of Petrofac that the UK arms continue to operate as normal and that we want that to continue into the future.
Stuart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1,000+ people are losing their jobs in North Sea oil and gas every month. And contrary to the case that the Minister presents, of course, this declining basin still has, the industry says, 4 billion additional barrels that could be extracted if only there were new licences. So he tells the House, Mr. Speaker, that it's going to be needed for decades to come, and he cuts off all new supply, mortally damaging the whole supply chain of which Petrofac is part. So he can't deny responsibility, and he needs to persuade the Chancellor, if not his Secretary of State, who's probably beyond persuasion, that we need to move to a practical policy, new licences, optimise it, because green and fossil fuels don't need to be in tension. We want the transition, but we must keep the jobs for now.
Well, can I firstly say I welcome the Honourable Gentleman's recognition that we seldom hear from the front bench of his party these days. that this is a transition and that we want the economic opportunities of oil and gas and renewables, and it's a delight to hear him say that. I think his front bench should say that more often and talk up the phenomenal industry that actually I have to say his party should take a bit of credit for over the past 14 years, building so much of the renewables across the country, but they've turned away from that. On the licensing point, look, I can't remember at what point the honourable gentleman was in the government, but of course the previous government said they wouldn't issue new licences, then they briefly did, then they recognised that that was the wrong policy. I think it was the Liz Truss years where they changed around. The future is a tiny fraction of licences that have been issued have ever resulted in extraction from the North Sea. We'll manage existing licences for their lifespan. We'll have a pragmatic view on the future of the North Sea, which we'll announce in the coming weeks. But the long-term future of the North Sea doesn't lie in oil and gas. It lies in renewables, carbon capture and hydrogen.
Angus MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the Minister would consider whether it really is a just transition, because we are getting thousands of contractors arriving in the Highlands. They stay in workers' camps. There's very few legacy houses being agreed. They're not employing local people, and all in an area where we have the highest level of fuel poverty in Britain.
Well, firstly, let me say, Mr. Speaker, that you know winter has come when the honourable gentleman turns up in his lovely knitted jumpers, and it's a pleasure to see them back again. Yes. Can I say, look, he and I have had a number of conversations about this, and I recognise how seriously he takes it. I think there have been some good moves recently to look at